Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror. If you're new here, thank you for clicking on my channel, and if you're returning, thank you for coming back. Today's video is going to be a little different from what I normally do. Normally, I stick very tightly to the subject of pathological narcissism and narcissistic abuse. Today's video is going to be about brainwashing or mind control or highly manipulative situations. This relates to narcissism because this is basically how narcissists get through life. They learn techniques that cause these kind of situations. They learn how to brainwash people or control people's thinking, and that's how they get what they want. But today's video, I think, is going to apply to a lot more people than most of my videos do. So I just kind of wanted to introduce myself to anyone that's just interested in this topic and maybe not so much interested in my usual topics. As a quick disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional, and everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I've experienced a lot of what I'm going to discuss today, and I really hope that the things that I've learned the hard way might help some people out there kind of get their minds out of these traps that I'm going to talk about. So what exactly do I mean when I talk about mind control or brainwashing or highly manipulative groups or people? I don't really know if there's one word that I would use for this. I kind of feel like there should be, but what I'm going to talk about applies to many different situations. It can apply to romantic relationships. It can apply to close friendships or even family relationships. It can apply to workplaces, or it can apply to different types of businesses and business opportunities. It can apply to any kind of group that really comes together with similar ideas and beliefs that maybe aren't rooted in science or logic, but which the group all believes together. It can apply to political movements, and of course it can apply to religion and religious groups. To be a little more specific, what I'm about to talk about today is going to apply mainly to abusive relationships and cult-like groups. And cult-like is not necessarily religious, but a cult-like group. So I believe that what I'm going to talk about today applies to a lot more people than may realize. I've experienced, I think, every form of mind control that I just mentioned, and that's why I want to make this video. I think that probably most of us fall victim to this in some way, in some form, at some point in our lives. And nearly all of us that fall victim to this type of thing don't realize it when it's happening. That's kind of the whole point. This is something that you really can't see as it's happening. So the ultimate goal of this video for me is to help someone out there that's being manipulated in this way and doesn't realize it, and after listening to this video is maybe able to see certain things in their lives from a different angle. That would be awesome if I could make that kind of difference for anybody watching this video. So I'm going to go over 7 signs that you might be being brainwashed right now. And the first sign is that you can listen to this whole entire video and never even think that it might apply to you. Being manipulated in this way is highly effective. It's very, very powerful. And it takes a lot more than somebody just mentioning the idea for you to really start to even consider that you might be being brainwashed. So you can easily get through this whole entire thing and never even think that it could be possible for you. So if you're in a political, religious, business group that you're very attached to, or a personal relationship, and you are unable to even think about the possibility that you might be being manipulated in that situation, you might want to just step back and look at it with a clear head and consider, is it possible? The second sign that you're being brainwashed is that you really didn't like the first sign that I just pointed out. It irked you, it annoyed you. And I guess I should say that none of these signs, of course, prove anything. And I'm not trying to prove that anybody out there is being brainwashed or manipulated. I'm just trying to help anyone that maybe is being brainwashed step back and reevaluate their situation. So of course, none of these signs prove anything by themselves, but if they get you to think a little differently about something that you haven't looked at from a certain angle, that would be great. And back to this second sign, if the first sign annoyed you and irked you, and you don't want to look at the things in your life as maybe something that's possibly manipulating you, exploiting you, taking advantage of you, and controlling your thinking, then that means that you're probably heavily emotionally invested in the things in your life, which is great. But if you're so emotionally invested in a group or a person that you can't even consider, you can't even think about the things that I'm saying and how they might apply to the things in your life, then that might be a sign that you're so emotionally invested in a person or a group that you cannot rationally evaluate it. So even if that person or group is not controlling you in this way, it has the power to do so. You defend trustworthy, truth-based relationships and groups with the truth, with facts, with logic, which is not high in emotion. It's calm, it's confident, it doesn't need to defend anything. But you defend lies and manipulation and things that you're very heavily invested in with emotion, and that is upsetting. It's upsetting to try to defend something that you're very emotionally invested in that actually doesn't really hold water when you try to use facts and logic and reason to defend it. It's very upsetting. And to me, that's a red flag. The third sign that you might be being brainwashed is that this person or this group, if you were to realize that it's not good for you and that you need to leave the group or cut off the relationship with the person, you would be extremely devastated. You cannot even imagine your life without this group or person. You've invested so much time and energy and faith, and you've done so many things with this in mind, with the trust you have in this person or this group in mind, that you can't even imagine having to cut things off with this person or group. Most trustworthy, healthy relationships and groups are not ones in which you would be absolutely devastated if you had to break things off with them. While healthy, well-connected relationships with people can be very devastating if you had to cut things off with a person, a group, a political group, a religious group, or a business group should never be something that you would be emotionally devastated to have to give up. I mean, it's one thing if you would miss it, if you would be sad to have to give it up, if you would feel like maybe something's missing in your life without it, but to be emotionally devastated, that's a red flag in my opinion. And when we're so invested in something that to give it up would be almost like losing a limb, our mind is going to protect us from the idea of having to face the truth and having to cut things off with that person or group. And our mind is going to work very hard to continue to convince us that things are the way that we want them to be and things are the way we're being told that they are. Our mind works very hard to protect us from pain. It doesn't really care so much about our long-term mental health. Our mind works very hard to protect us from pain in the present moment. And it's very, very good at helping us to convince ourselves of things that we want to believe. The fourth sign that you might be being brainwashed is that the group that you're in, or possibly even the person that you're in a relationship with, comes with a collection of believers. And these believers would be very upset with you if you were to leave. So as far as this would apply to a personal relationship, it might not so much, but I know in some situations you might be in a relationship with somebody in which you've got maybe your family, maybe their family, friends, people that don't want you to leave, people that would turn their backs on you and cut you out of their life, cut off the relationship with you if you were to leave this person. And while there certainly may be exceptions there with people, because people are not that simple, but with a group, you should never be in a group in which you have friends that if you were to leave that group, those people would turn their backs on you. It's one thing to be in some kind of club or group in which you're associating with people, and because you're associating with them, you build friendships, and if you leave, you kind of drift apart. That's natural. But something's wrong with a group in which if you were to leave, you would be shunned, you would be punished, and those people would stop talking to you because you left. They would look down on you. You're not really allowed to leave. And this can be a political, religious, or business type group. I've seen it in all three of these examples. There's an us versus them mentality, and it creates a fear in which you don't want to leave. And like in the third sign, you don't want to leave because it would be emotionally devastating and humiliating, but you also don't want to leave because you're going to be publicly shamed and shunned and cut off from relationships that you may have grown dependent on. The fifth sign that you might be being brainwashed is that you pretend to feel things that you don't really feel. You feel a pressure to be happy. You feel a pressure to appear happy to other people because you're always kind of trying to sell this to other people that are watching you. This can apply to an abusive relationship just as much as it can apply to a group. And I should add that if you're part of a group that this applies to, it's highly likely that you're actively trying to recruit other people into your group, or you're at least trying to encourage other people to look at what you're doing and become interested in it. And part of this is trying to put on this appearance that you're happy and that your life is so great because you're part of this group. And often in these groups, you're anything but happy. These types of groups take a lot of your energy, a lot of your time, and they can really wear you out. And a lot of the things that are expected of you are actually not enjoyable at all. It can really become a huge pain, but you've got to pretend, you've got to convince yourself for whatever reason that you're really happy and that your life is amazing because of this group. Part of this is the idea that you've invested so much time and energy and possibly money into this group that you're too afraid to look at the truth that you're actually quite miserable. And another point is that the people that are in this group are often very good at convincing you that something is wrong with you. If you're not happy or you're not successful, it's your fault. It's not the group's fault. So you just need to keep smiling, keep trying, keep pretending until things start going your way. Because if they're not going your way, it's because you're doing something wrong. And of course, this applies to abusive relationships as well. Everything's always your fault. And if you're not happy with your abusive partner, it's because you just need to try harder. And it can be quite embarrassing to finally face the truth. And if we're in abusive relationships, it's quite common for us to try to put on a happy face and pretend that everything's fine. Largely because we don't want to look at the truth, and we really don't want other people seeing it either. The sixth sign that you might be being brainwashed is that you feel like you owe something to this person or this group. If this is an abusive relationship, you might feel like you're lucky to be with this person and that you've really messed up a lot and you need to try harder, and you're so lucky that this person sticks around and puts up with you. And who do you think you are that you would want to leave? You're reminded of the things this person does for you and you feel indebted to them. You don't feel like you have a right to cut the relationship off. And you can often become very confused as to, why do I feel so miserable and alone with this person when they are so amazing and I'm so lucky to be with them? And of course, this applies to highly manipulative groups as well. We're promised so many things when we join these types of groups, or when we're in these types of groups. We're promised happiness, prosperity, community, and often some of this stuff is delivered. Nobody would join a highly manipulative group if they got nothing out of it. It's not like these types of groups give us nothing in return. It's just that they take so much more than they give, and they're usually based on lies. And that's what really gets me. I don't care how much I get from a group. I don't care how much I'm given. If I'm being held there with lies, I'm not interested in it. I don't care how much I stand to benefit. If you have to hold me there by lying to me, it's because it's costing me far more than I'm getting from it. And so these lies are what create this feeling of indebtedness, and these token things that we're given, often the things that attracted us in the first place, things that were maybe great vulnerabilities for us, things that were exploited and taken advantage of, and needs which were actually met. These are the things that got us into these relationships or groups in the first place, and they're what hold us there, because we feel like we would be considered ungrateful if we were to cut things off, if we were to try to leave this group or this person. And we fail to recognize the contributions that we've made to the relationship or to the group. The focus in these types of groups or relationships is put on what we were given, on what the group or person gave us or gave up. The focus is so heavy there that we're being distracted from how much they're getting out of us, from how much we're actually giving of ourselves. And so this creates this feeling of, how could I ever leave this person, or how could I ever leave this group after everything they've done for me? When the truth is, really, you're being manipulated, you're being exploited, you're being taken advantage of, and you're being sucked dry, and you're being given breadcrumbs in return, and you're being made to feel as if you owe your life to a group or a person that doesn't appreciate you and will never stop taking advantage of you until you do something about it. And the seventh sign that you're being brainwashed would apply mostly to groups more so than it would to a personal relationship. And the seventh sign is that you have an extreme emotional reaction when you see negative opinions about the group that you're in. And again, the group can be political, religious, or business related. But if this is a tight-knit group and there are people out in the public that have maybe left this group and are speaking out against this group, you're going to have very high emotional reactions to this. It's quite common that the group you're in would actually forbid you from even listening to what people that are speaking out are saying. The information available that presents arguments against the groups you're in can be called anti whatever it is that you're doing. And in my opinion, I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I can't really think of any organized community that considers themselves anti something that they've left that doesn't present some really strong evidence. Any group that has people that say that they are recovering from this group, or people that have had to go to therapy to recover from these groups, or people that devote whole channels to how these groups affected their lives and how they've learned to move on with their life after post-group. Any group that affects your life this heavily probably has some things that you need to look at. And if you're being brainwashed and manipulated, you're not really going to want to look at it. You're going to be much more likely to just brush everything under the rug. You're going to just dismiss these people as haters and people that are just jealous of you, or people that just, maybe if it's a business related group, just couldn't hack it, just didn't work hard enough, didn't try hard enough, or maybe people that didn't really believe in it in the first place and they're just out to get us for no good reason. More than 9 times out of 10, if this is the kind of rhetoric that you're hearing, there's probably something wrong with the group that you're in. I hope you found this video interesting. This is kind of an experiment for me because it deviates a little bit from my usual topics. Let me know what you think in the comments below if you found this interesting. And I would love to hear if this got anybody out there thinking about a relationship or a group that they're in themselves. And if you're interested in learning about pathological narcissism and narcissistic abuse, definitely check out the rest of my videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to hear more about this in the future. Until next time, thank you. Bye.